Hey friends. So I wanted to talk about the myth of sixth season. This is a conversation we've been having a lot over in my private community on Patreon, but I wanted to bring it over here because I think it's an important conversation. And you'll hear so many people refer to this time of year as we are in autumn and transitioning towards the colder months and the holiday season. Everybody says, oh, it's just sick season. You're just going to get sick because that's how it goes. And when it gets cold, you get sick. And I think that that's not the whole picture. You can just as easily get sick in any season. And so, why is it that more people end up sick in the colder, darker months? And it's a pretty simple explanation. And it's one that, if you think back to how our ancestors would have lived, it becomes quite obvious because modern life has not set us up for wellness on so many levels, but specifically in terms of seasonal shifts and this idea of going into the winter and the autumn. So naturally, this time of year, we have reduced amount of daylight. The nights grow longer, the temperature shifts, it's cooler, it's even drier, there's less humidity. And so ancestrally, we would have slowed down. We would have just honored the seasons and started to rest more. The crops are harvested. You kind of start slowing down. You don't need to keep doing everything. There would have not been artificial light at a certain time, so we would have just gone along with the natural cycles of dark and light, maybe using fire or candlelight, oil lamps, something like that, if we needed light during the darkness, but there would have been no such thing as these blue light LED bulbs in our faces. There wasn't as much climate control either. Yes, you could warm by a fire, maybe a fireplace as we get later on in humanity, but there's no just like avoiding the cold altogether and going from a heated house to a heated car to a heated store. And so we've really taken ourselves out of the elements. And I think that that impacts us even more in autumn and winter because we're so far away from what the natural cycle would be, right? Like in summer, there's definitely more light. So having that artificial blue light, while it still impacts us negatively, it doesn't impact us as much as maybe it does in winter because we're not actually getting that darkness. If you're above the 35th latitude, you're not getting UVB light from like November to February or a shorter time than that, depending where you are. And that's how you make vitamin D. And what happens in your body is that when vitamin D is not being made, melatonin steps up, right? So, melatonin is this really important hormone that can serve some of the same functions that vitamin D might serve in other times of the year. But melatonin needs darkness. And so, we're not doing that. So, in this big picture, what sick season really is it's a time when we are shifting even further from our connection with natural cycles and seasonal rhythms. We are getting amped up. A lot of people get a lot busier as the holidays approach. There's now all of a sudden holiday parties, there's things you have to do. You have to buy candy to give out at Halloween, you have to attend a family gathering, an office party. The school has all these events. There's going to be social gatherings, more and more amped up. And what is the kind of highlight of so many of these gatherings? It's sugar. Okay, so we go from Halloween candy to Thanksgiving desserts, into like Christmas candy and cookies and cakes, into New Year's, with all the alcohol, right? So that's the other piece. Alcohol is featured at so many of these gatherings. So many people are starting to consume higher amounts of processed sugar, more alcoholic beverages, and at the same time, they are busy and stressed, perhaps. Maybe financial stress from having to buy gifts. Maybe it's the stress of managing busier schedules. Maybe it's the stress of being in uncomfortable social or familial situations as we gather back for the holidays. And so we have high stress, we have busy lifestyles, which means a lot of people are now not sleeping as much as they should be. So if you study Cultures that are off grid, that have no electricity, and that are still living modern day, but still living more in the natural cycles, then across the board, these people all sleep about an hour longer in the winter than they do in a summer night. So sleep is supposed to get longer. We're supposed to sleep more in the darker months in the winter, and yet many people start to sleep less when they get busier as they're going into sick season, sugar season, stress season. And so we're piling all these things on top of each other that are negatively impacting our health. We're consuming sugar, we're consuming alcohol, we're not sleeping as much, we're experiencing higher amounts of stress, our cortisol is spiked. Maybe we're compensating for that lack of sleep with extra caffeine, and then we get into like the pumpkin spice latte obsession or whatever it is, and all the coffee drinks, the caffeine, the sugar. So here we go, we're just piling it on. And then the baked goods, right? So all that processed flour, and anymore people aren't even making homemade goods. So what you're buying in the store is full of junk. It's full of preservatives and artificial flavors and artificial colors and who knows what. So your body has this huge toxic load, and now you're not supporting the systems that detox, right? So how can you do that? We're also starting to hydrate less. So it's ironic because, a lot of people, like when they're feeling hot in the summer, it's easier to drink more water. We actually need more hydration in the drier months of autumn and winter. But a lot of people actually back off that natural ability to drink enough water. And then let's not even get started on the quality of water that people are drinking. It's not even water your body can use. Reverse osmosis water is stripped of all minerals. Tap water is full of toxins. So unless you're really tending to getting high quality spring water, or you're filtering your water but then remineralizing it, structuring it, your body can't even use, your cells can't even use the water you're taking in, right? So cellular hydration becomes a problem. So we're really just going into this perfect storm of stacking problem on problem on problem on problem. And so there's some things you can do as we're going into quote unquote sixth season to set yourself up for better health across the board. So the main one is going to be to prioritize sleep. You might have to say no to some gatherings, you might have to leave early. I don't care. Go to bed, right? All the studies show that people who go to bed by 10 p.m. are infinitely healthier than people who go to bed later, even if they're getting the same duration of sleep, okay? So try to be in bed by 10 p.m. Whenever you can. Focus on hydration. You should be drinking at least half your body weight in ounces of high quality water every day. Definitely try to avoid the processed foods, the baked goods, the candies, right? So if you feel like you can't just say no to that, you can try to make some swaps. So for example, there's a brand of candy that I try to give out at Halloween because I just can't bear the thought of giving other types of candy to children. And it's called Yum Earth or Yummy Earth, but they have all of this candy that is actually made with whole fruit juices and no artificial flavors, no artificial colors, no artificial sweeteners. It's organic, cane sugar. So yes, it's still sugar, not good for you, but it's certainly much better than the alternative. So you can make some swaps. Another thing you can do, and what I like to do, is if I'm going to a social gathering where everyone's bringing a dish, I'll sign up to bring some things that I know I can control the ingredients. So I can make, an apple crisp without any processed sugar. I can sweeten it with honey, and I can use cassava flour. So I know that at least I can eat that, and that's good for me. And so you can set yourself up that way by just checking in with what you're making and what you're offering. I'm not a big drinker, but I definitely recommend for people who like the alcohol and are going to be in situations where they want that, bring an herbal mocktail, make a swap. A mocktail can be as simple as like a sparkling mineral water with a splash of fruit juice, right? So just set yourself up with alternatives so that you won't reach for those things that are going to put you in a bad situation. Try to rest as much as you can and still get outside as much as you can. We need the light. We still need the UVA, the red and infrared light all winter. That's what's going to help us with our melatonin production. And so just try to spend time outside. Let yourself get cold. It's really good for your body. It's a Zeitgeber. It lets your body know what time it is, where you are in time and space, and what to do with your bodily processes. So, hydration, limiting processed foods, getting outside, getting a lot of rest, and finally, try to mitigate some of that stress, whatever that looks like for you. So, really prioritizing engaging in your stress relieving techniques or saying no to things that are just overburdening you and too much to put on your plate. But really just tuning in, taking care of yourself. Take a cue from the plants right now. If you notice the leaves are dropping, all the energy is coming back inward, going down to the root. That's where your energy should be going to. That is the entire goal of this season, is for us to turn inward, start to rest, start to slow down, kind of like synthesize all that energy, come back to ourselves. And so I invite you to follow that seasonal rhythm to the best of your ability and do that where you can. And I promise that you will have a better time of quote unquote sixth season if you follow those recommendations. Let me know if you do any of these things in the comments, or like what your relationship is to the holiday season. And if you ever feel that interesting tension between like what the seasons are calling for us to do and then what social obligations are asking us to do, because there's a big disconnect there. All right. Thanks for listening.